going to ask Gary and Toni a few questions, and you'll get an opportunity to meet them. We're a church family here, so we like to get to know each other a little bit better. Let me just start off with the first question. Where did you grow up? Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Is that light right in your face? Here, you might need that.
I grew up in Illinois. I lived in a town called Pekin, and then we moved over to Peoria when I was in high school, and we lived there.
I was born in Glendale, California, and I grew up in Southern California, and I was there the whole time until I left home and went to school and started working.
All right, so what did you do for work? That'd be a good follow-up question to that.
I worked for United Airlines. I was a flight attendant. I started when I was 20 years old, and I had that job for 36 years until I retired.
So you could tell us how to buckle our seats and all those types of things. You probably still have it memorized? Oh. Very nice.
I've had too many jobs to tell you about in this short time. This would really be a long service if I went through every job. Right now, I'm blessed by being the janitor of this church, which I've done that before at another church, but it's been a real blessing to be a janitor here, to serve you people and to work alongside Brian and Nathan and Tracy and everyone else that's involved in this ministry.
Very good. So what do you do for fun?
I like to kayak. I like to ride a bike. I like to go. I actually learned to fish from my good friend Doug this year. Kind of got me hooked on that. I'm waiting to go out on that boat again. And I also like to go out in the RV and just, we watch baseball a lot.
Mariners.
Won again they're on a streak
night.
Again. Three games in a row here. Wow.
I'm sure there's a lot of Mariners fans out here. At least me and you and Toni. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
He's the outdoor guy. I'm the indoor person. I like to be creative. I like to read. I like writing. I write stories, and I wrote a Bible study. I enjoy cooking. I love crafts. He did get me out in the kayak this last summer, and I loved it. I said I'll go again as long as the water is not moving. I'll go in the lake, but I'm not ready for the Payette yet.
All right. Can you tell us about your family?
I have two children. Toni graciously took on my son when he was 6 years old and took him on as her own and loved him. And then we have a daughter together, and we have one grandson, only one grandchild. Probably will only ever have one grandchild at the rate it's going. So, but we're really blessed by them, and the rest of my. I have a brother and sister that live back in Illinois still, and my parents have been dead for years.
Yeah, I have older siblings. One brother that's passed. I have two sisters and a brother, and like Gary said, two kids, one grandchild.
And I know who's spoiled then. The one grandchild, right?
Yeah, and his name is?
Very good, very good.
You can't spoil a good child. You can only give them love.
All right, so how did you guys meet? Or you didn't want to answer that question? Is that one off limits?
No, it's
okay.
I can give you the tame version. We met through some mutual friends. Actually, our first meeting was, and Toni had to remind me this the other day. I do remember meeting her there, but we were at a spaghetti factory, an old spaghetti factory, and I met her there. It was a large party, and she was there amongst the group. But then we met up again at another party, and we've kind of been together ever since.
It was actually somebody that he worked with was a friend of somebody that I worked with. And they actually had gone to high school together and had remained friends, and that was kind of the connection there.
All right. So how did you end up in church?
Well, I grew up going to church, but actually you'd never know it by, I acted like God didn't exist, really. And I was pretty much into doing my own thing and just partying and having a good time. A lot of alcohol involved in those years. I was pretty selfish and self-centered and really didn't care about anybody except having a good time and doing my own thing. Let's fast forward to 40, when I was in my early 40s. I was working at a company that we built gas station canopies, and there was a guy that I was working with, and he asked me to come to a Saturday morning men's breakfast and a Bible study. And wow, I said yes. I couldn't believe it when the words came out of my mouth. I said, go to church with this guy? Wow, what am I thinking? So anyway, I went, and I had told Toni, she was off on a trip, and we talked that night, and I said, yeah, I'm going to go to a Bible study tomorrow. And she said, what? You're going to church? Because she'd been trying to get me to go to church for several years, and I just wasn't having any part of it. Well, I ended up at this men's group on Saturday morning, and these guys were so loving and kind and welcoming, and I mean, they just brought me in like I was one of their own, and they didn't care about my past, they didn't care about where I'd been and all the things I had done, and so I felt really comfortable there. I felt really loved. And so I took Molly, our daughter, and we went the next Sunday to church, and we were at that church for 20 years. And all of this just because some guy invited me to come to a Bible study. So that just shows you what you can do by just inviting somebody to come along and follow Jesus. I mean, it doesn't take much, just a little offer. And
some food.
And some food.
And some
food counts, so.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, with the offer, you never know where God's working in that person's life at that particular moment. Like me, I wasn't expecting to say yes to that, but I was led that way. God's always had my back, even though I was running away from him for years, but he definitely was watching out for me over the years. And, Toni and I have been traveling along on this path now for a lot of years, and we still have our struggles. It's not an easy road, but at least we know where to go to find our strength, and that's in Jesus. So if anybody out there needs to find out about Jesus and get rid of all that pain and all that anger and all that unforgiving that you have in your life, come to Jesus. He'll take care of that and get rid of it for you, and you'll grow in him.
I did not grow up in church. I went to Sunday school maybe a couple of times with friends, but it wasn't in my home. We didn't talk about faith or anything like that. So when Gary and I got married, and like he said, it was not a good lifestyle. There were a lot of drugs involved, and while he was using and selling, I turned to alcohol as my drug choice, and just got into that deeper and deeper. And finally, I was just thinking there's got to be something else, because I saw we were drifting apart. All of that lifestyle was more important to him than our family and our marriage, and I was feeling it crumble beneath us. And so I was searching. So I did go to a couple of different churches here and there, and it was okay. And like he said, I invited him to come, and he always said no, he didn't need that. And then something happened. I got a call. I grew up in I thought, a really wonderful family. We were really close, and my parents loved me and stayed married forever, and were very encouraging. But I got a call that my father had been arrested and convicted and then finally imprisoned for a sexual crime. And that's when it all fell apart. And I figured there was nowhere else to go. To backtrack, I have a sister that is 14 years older than I am. She was the only Christian in our whole family. She began praying for me before I was born and continued to do that. So when all of this came about and the family gathered, pretty much everybody scattered, and they just said that this was an unforgivable crime. But Beverly stuck by me. She prayed with me. She taught me about forgiveness. I forgave my father, even though everybody was telling me that it was unforgivable, including some Christians were telling me this. And so it was a long, long struggle, a long process, and eventually, as Gary said, when he started going to church, I started going to church. And that's when the Lord started working on me and telling me how much he loved me, and that's why he could forgive me. Because I knew that forgiveness was supernatural. That was not a human thing that I could do on my own. And he forgave me, and I was able to begin building my life after that. And like Gary said, it was just this wonderful, loving church. And in fact, when we moved here and we walked into this church, it felt very much the same. And we felt like, oh, we're home.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Just real quickly, where have you seen God working in your life? Last question.
After we started attending that church, shortly thereafter, and started getting involved, someone asked us if we would be a part or come to the mission meeting. And we're like, oh, I don't know. We didn't know anything about that. And we went, and one of the things that they did was go down to the homeless mission in Seattle. And so we went down there, and we would go down once a month. And at first I was like, I don't think so. What am I doing here? Well, it ended up that we went once a month. We took our youth group every time. We would serve a meal, we would have a worship service, and we would speak. Well, as time went on, and months and years, I ended up speaking down there. We ended up sitting with these men and eating dinner with them and hearing their stories and realizing that we could offer hope. We could offer Jesus, because if it wasn't for God's mercy and grace, we would have been sitting there at those tables having dinner as well. We would have been the ones that have lost our families, lost our homes, and been homeless. So God is amazing how he used us to share our own lives and to have compassion on people that nobody else did.
What she said. But one of the things that I see God working in my life, and like I said before about working here, God has brought me in relationship with a couple of guys here that just love me and show me the way and how to act and correct me when I need to be corrected. And it's just made me grow in love for him and wanting to be more of the kind of person that I know I can be through his strength.
Praise the Lord. Well, would you stand together?